Hello, Lovelace, and welcome to our science lesson for today on materials and their properties. Today's question is, can I investigate the strength of materials? Now, to be able to complete this lesson, you need to know, can I identify the properties of various materials? Now, this is something we've looked at in previous lessons, so hopefully this is quite familiar to you. Can I create ideas for how to investigate material strength? So a little bit of thinking and planning today. Can I find out which material is the strongest? Can I actually carry out an investigation for myself and find out? So here's a few words that we've used in the past, a couple of new ones to do with the properties of materials. We've got questions like, is it flexible? Is it smooth? Is it rough? Does it feel cold? Is it squidgy? Is it hard? Is it transparent? Or is it slippery? I've got a selection of materials now, and I just want you to associate which is the best word or words to describe this material. The first one is steel. Just take a moment, which of those words are best suited for steel. Now, I would have thought you would come up with smooth, cold, and hard. I would have thought those would be the three main ones for steel. What about wood? Now, wood, depending on how it's treated, could be rough or smooth. So if wood is sanded down, it can be lovely and smooth, but it can also be rough. So that's a tricky one. Is it hard? Yes, it is. Okay, so I would say hard, and then rough or smooth, depending on how it's been treated. Now, what about clear Perspex? That's a type of plastic. For this one, I would expect you to select smooth, probably cold, and transparent. Remember, transparent is the word we use when light passes through, when we can see clearly through an object. If we can only see a little bit, if only some of the light is getting through, then it is translucent. And if we can't see at all, if it's no light is getting through, then it is an opaque object. But clear Perspex is transparent. Finally, plasticine. What about that? Which words best suit plasticine? Well, I would say it's certainly flexible because you can manipulate it with your hands and change its shape. Now, is it smooth? Well, it certainly can be. You can turn it into a very, very smooth surface. Does it feel cold? Well, that depends. If it's been used, played with, it can get quite warm. But straight out of the box, yes, it probably is cold. Is it squidgy? Usually, yes. But again, the warmer it is, the more squidgy it gets. If it's really cold, it can be quite hard. And so that answers this question. It depends how cold it is. Is it transparent? No, it's not. Is it slippery? No, not usually. Right. So what is testing? If we're looking at testing today, well, testing is a procedure designed to establish the quality, performance, or the reliability of something. We can test cars. Each year, cars going for what we call an MOT to see if they're safe. So we can test cars. We could test mattresses. We've all seen the commercials on TV where companies try to sell their mattresses and show that they've been tested. They've been absolutely beaten up by robots to show how well they last after years and years and years of wear. So we can test mattresses. We can even test you. Children can be tested to see if they understand what they've been taught. In fact, we can test anything. Manufacturers will test everything they make to see if it's safe and can do the job it's supposed to do. Companies are not going to do very well if they sell things that don't do the job they're supposed to or that break easily. So it's really, really important that we are able to test things to see if they are they can do the job they're supposed to. So now you're going to create some ideas for yourself. If we are going to create an investigation, an experiment to test the strength of materials, then it has to be fair. So what do we have to do to create a fair test? Have a think. I know when I was in just before Christmas, we talked briefly about fair testing with our parachute drops. So what do you think an experiment needs to have to be fair? Well, when you're testing something, you need to make sure it is a fair test. And to do this, everything should be the same, except for that one thing that you're testing. So if we were testing the strength of paper, the only thing we would change is the type of paper we use. The rest of the test has to stay exactly the same. Okay? Now, there's a little video here that say you can click on the link in the lesson explanation, in the lesson description. It's just a short one, just 2 minutes, 39 seconds, but it's an example of a fair test testing strength, and it might just give you some ideas for the next part of the lesson. So if you've got a couple of minutes, have a click on the link and have a look. We're going to just have a look at how the person in this video makes his test fair. Now, it's a test all about the strength of different threads or strings. Okay. Okay, so if you do watch it, just give you a chance to pause the video and have a look. Don't panic if you can't watch it just now, though. It won't make a big difference to the lesson, so don't worry. But if you do get the chance, or when you get the chance to watch the video, it's fair because all the threads that he uses are the same length. Okay? It's not a long piece of one string and a short piece of another. They're all the same length. He attaches the same bucket. So in the video, if you've not seen it, a bucket is tied to each piece of string or each piece of thread, but he uses the same bucket to make it fair. The same type of weight, and in the case of the video, it's water is used. So again, if you haven't seen the video, we have a piece of thread with a bucket tied to the bottom, and then he pours in water to see how much water each thread will take before it breaks. And finally, the threads are fixed to the same point, the door. So the setup for the experiment is exactly the same. He ties the piece of thread to the door, he ties the same bucket to each piece of thread, and he adds water in the same way to each time. So everything is kept the same. The only thing that changes is the type of thread. Okay, so it is a fair test. Now, a little note, because I'm going to be asking you to do an experiment, and you're going to need to find some sort of weights. Now, in the video, he used water as his weight. But again, if you saw the video, you will see that water got a little bit messy. He did splash a bit. So when you're doing your experiment, think about other weights, or if you choose to use water, make sure you work over a sink or over the bath or somewhere, or maybe outside, somewhere where splashing will not matter. I do not want you getting in trouble at home because you've got everything wet. Okay, so think about using different weights, or if you are going to use water, think about where you do your experiment, please. Okay, now around the house, you'll find lots of different types of paper. Here's just 7 as examples. So we've got toilet roll, toilet paper. We've got wrapping paper. I'm sure we've all still got a few bits and pieces left over after Christmas. We've got kitchen roll or kitchen paper. We've got printer paper, just plain A4 white paper. We've got cereal boxes, so the thin card that is used to make cereal boxes. We've got newspaper, we've got magazines. The list goes on and on and on. I'm sure you can find even more examples of types of paper around your house. So here's your task. First of all, please make sure you have permission to take these bits of paper and do not damage or cut up anything important. I'd like you to find 5 different pieces of paper, please, 5 different types of paper. Okay, so as I say, whatever your 5 types of paper are, make sure they're not important, they're not valuable documents, you're not going to upset someone if you use them. Okay, so 5 different types of paper. Then I'd like you to make a prediction before you even start. So before you do your experiment, which do you think is going to be the strongest piece of paper? And just make a note somewhere. You will need that information later, but just for now, just make a note. Which do you think of your 5 do you think will be the strongest? Now, I'd like you to design an experiment. I want you to test the strength of the different paper types. Remember, you must keep it fair. You can only change the type of paper. Everything else that you do needs to be the same for each of your 5 experiments. Okay? So whatever you do, so for example, if you're starting with toilet paper, then whatever you do to that paper, whatever your experiment is, your test, you have to do exactly the same for paper number 2, which might be kitchen paper, and for paper number 3, which might be a magazine paper or paper, and so on. You need to do exactly the same test for each of the 5 types of paper. Also, to keep it fair, you need to cut the paper so it's all the same size. Okay. Now, it's most likely that if you decide to use toilet paper, that will be the smallest piece of paper you have. So maybe you cut everything to the same size as that, or maybe a little bit smaller. That's up to you. But all 5 pieces of paper should be the same size. Again, to keep your test fair. Now, if you're not sure, if you can't think of a way to create this experiment, then go back and look at the video when he tested the threads. That might be a way for you to do your investigation. Okay, to add weights to your paper and see at what point they break. But it's up to you. You might come up with a completely different idea for how to do the test. Finally, do your investigation. I'd like you to do the experiment, please. Now, you are limited to what you can find around the house, so you need to be creative. Now, I'm going to let you into a secret. I have done my investigation, and I will share that with you next lesson. But I have had to be very creative in the weights that I've used. Okay? So think about the things that you've got lying around the house that you might be able to use for your investigation. We're not in the classroom anymore. We can't go to the science store and use real weights and things like that. We have to be a bit more creative and imaginative. Okay, so think about what you've got around the house that you could use as weights. Think about the different paper you've got lying around the house and create a fair scientific investigation to test how strong different types of paper are. Make sure you record your results, okay? So make sure you record some numbers. So each type of paper should have a result next to it so we know how well it performed. Take a few pictures along the way. They'll help you remember what you've done and they'll help you with the next lesson, okay? You don't need to hand anything in for this particular lesson. The work you're going to upload onto Tapestry will all be based on our next lesson, okay? So do your task, do the investigation at home, make your notes, but just keep hold of them and then we'll put the work together in our next lesson. Okay, that's the end of it for today. Enjoy your investigation. Enjoy ripping up bits of paper, but please make sure when you've finished, any mess you make, you tidy up. Okay, your mess, you put everything away. But enjoy your science. That's the end of the lesson. You take care of yourself, guys, and I will see you all soon.